Hello and welcome back to the 14th episode of the Culture Club podcast. If this is your first time listening, welcome. I hope you learned something here today, and if you're coming back, thank you so much for supporting the podcast. My name is Oscar Dalton. I'm a currency collector, amateur vexillographer, and lover of cultures from all over the world. Today's episode will be on Bulgaria. But before we get into the culture, I would just like to apologize for the 2-week hiatus we had on this show. We had some technical difficulties with the computer and everything we record on, but I'm glad we're back. So, without further ado, let's get into the culture. Just a quick reminder though, before we start talking about Bulgaria, the 20th episode spectacular is coming up. I know it's still 6 weeks away, but you could never be too prepared. So, I don't exactly know what it's going to be. Maybe it's going to be another Munchpack video. Maybe it's going to be something else. But I am thinking of doing a little Q&A segment if enough questions get sent in. You could, if you have anything to ask, you could ask about me, the podcast, just anything in general. You could put them down in the comments under this video, or you could send them to me on Twitter at CultureClubPod1 or on Facebook at Oscar Dalton. So let's just start talking about some Bulgarian basic facts. The Republic of Bulgaria is a country in Southeast Europe, sometimes called the Balkan region. It borders Romania to the north, Serbia to the west, Northern Macedonia to the southwest, Greece to the south, Turkey to the southeast, and the Black Sea to the east. The eastern two-thirds actually, of Bulgaria is flat, but Bulgaria is very mountainous near the Serbian and Northern Macedonian border. Bulgaria's largest river is the Danube, which spans most of the northern border. The highest point in Bulgaria is the Masala Mountain, which stands at around 12,925 meters. Coincidentally, the Masala Mountain is the highest point in all of the Balkans as well. Bulgaria spans around 110,993 square kilometers, or 42,854 square miles, making it slightly larger than the American state of Ohio. About 7 million people call Bulgaria home, making Bulgaria the 104th most highly populated nation in the world and the 118th most densely populated nation in the world. Around 85% of Bulgaria's population is ethnically homogeneous, having at least one Bulgarian-born parent. The other biggest ethnic groups in Bulgaria are the Turkish people, with around 9% of the population, and the Romani people, with around 5% of the population. The most common religions in Bulgaria are the unique Bulgarian Orthodoxy, Christian sect with around 59.5% of the population, Roman Catholicism with 1.6% of the population, atheism with 9% of the population, and Islam with 8%. The capital of Bulgaria is Sofia, which has a population of around 1.3 million inhabitants. The second biggest city in Bulgaria is Plovdiv, with a population of around 675,000 residents. The GDP, or gross domestic product, which is used to measure a country's wealth of Bulgaria, is $68 million, which makes Bulgaria the 72nd richest country in the world. The HDI scale measures a country's standard of living. The HDI score of Bulgaria is 0.816, which is in the very high range and gives Bulgaria the 56th highest standard of living in the world. Bulgaria uses Eastern European Time, or UTC+2, and they drive on the right side of the road. Those are all the basic facts you really need to know about Bulgaria, so let's talk about the Bulgarian government and some Bulgarian subdivisions. Bulgaria is a unitary parliamentary republic, which means a single body controls the country, and a democratically elected parliament is the head legislation in the said country. The National Assembly is the parliament in Bulgaria. It only has one house, making it unicameral, which is different from the British and American bicameral systems with two houses, like for example, the US has the Senate and the House of Representatives. The National Assembly uses the proportional representation voting system, with a 4% threshold. This means that people rank parties, and if a party gets 4% of the vote, they get 2 seats. Elections in the National Assembly happen every 4 years, with the last one happening on April 4th, 2021, which is the day I am recording this, so take every politics discussion in this with a grain of salt because it all probably looks vastly different by now. I apologize. If you want to see the actual statistics and how the National Assembly looks now, then you could see all the results. They're probably all over the internet by now because the Bulgarian parliamentary election is a big deal. Alright, so there are 115 members of the governing coalition in Bulgaria, with 94 belonging to the GERB party, which is the Conservative Party. It's probably not pronounced the GERB party, it's the GERB party, but GERB party sounds so much more fun. 12 seats in the governing coalition belong to the far-right IMRO party, and 9 seats belong to the nationalist NFSB party. Wow, the Bulgarians really like their acronyms. 12 seats belong to the Confidence and Supply Coalition, which are basically part of the governing coalition. 94 seats belong to the opposing coalition, 69 of those belong to the Bulgarian Socialist Party, nice, and 25 seats belong to the centrist DPS party. 19 seats belong to independent politicians that don't identify with any political party or coalition. The President of Bulgaria is elected separately from the representatives in the National Assembly. They're elected every 5 years by the two-round majoritarian voting system. In this system, the voters first vote for the candidates on a list of many people. I don't think it's very hard to get into that list, but only a few candidates are actually taken seriously. Then the top 2 candidates with the most votes from all around the country go on to the second round. In the second round, there's another popular vote where the one with the most votes becomes president. The current president of Bulgaria, which is probably outdated by now, but maybe not, who knows, is Rumen Radev, who was elected in 2017. Before being president, he was in the Air Force for 40 years. Bulgaria is split up into 28 regions with practically no powers themselves. They're just really traditional regions. The biggest region by population is Sofia City, with a population of 1.3 million, which is different from regular Sofia. Sofia City is the actual city with the metropolitan area, and Sofia is kind of like the suburbs around it. That's really all I have on the government and subdivisions of Bulgaria. So let's talk about the languages of Bulgaria. The official language of Bulgaria is Bulgarian, which is spoken as a first language by 85% of the Bulgarian population, and as a second language by pretty much the rest of Bulgaria, mostly Turkish immigrants. Bulgarian can be written using the Latin and Cyrillic alphabets. Turkish is spoken as a first language by 9% of the population, and Romani is spoken as a first language by just over 4% of the population. There's not that much information on the languages of Bulgaria, so that's kind of where I'm going to have to end it for this segment this week. But let's just talk about some Bulgarian currency. The official currency of Bulgaria is the Bulgarian lev. It has an ISO code of BGN, and the ISO number of the lev is 975. The subdivision of the lev is the stoinka, which is 1/100th of the lev, which means 100 stoinika makes 1 lev. I am not really sure how to pronounce that, stoinika, but you're probably going to hear different pronunciations throughout the episode, so sorry. The banknotes used in Bulgaria are the 5, 10, 20, 50, and 100 lev notes, but a 2 lev note is also in circulation, but not really produced anymore. The coins used in Bulgaria are the 1, 2, 5, 10, 20, and 50 stoinka coins, alongside the 1 and 2 lev coins. There is only one mint in Bulgaria, the Bulgarian mint, in the capital Sofia. Bulgaria is going to adopt the euro in 2023 or 2024. It was decided between the European Parliament and the Bulgarian National Assembly in kind of like a dual agreement. $1 is around 1 lev and 64 stoinika, and that's really it for Bulgarian currency. So let's talk about some Bulgarian flags. The flag of Bulgaria is a horizontal tricolor of white, green, and red, with the white on top, green in the middle, and red on the bottom. The white stands for purity and freedom, the green stands for agricultural wealth of Bulgaria, and the red stands for the Bulgarian people's fight for independence. The coat of arms of Bulgaria consists of a crowned golden lion over a dark red shield. Above the shield is a Bulgarian historical crown. The lions are standing on some leaves or something, which are attached to a piece of paper which has the motto of Bulgaria, which is "Unity makes strength." That's all I have on some of the national symbols of Bulgaria. So let's talk about some Bulgarian food, but first, let's enjoy this anthem a little bit. The national food of Bulgaria is shopska salad. Shopska salad is made of tomatoes, cucumbers, onions, roasted pepper, sirene, a white brine cheese, all dressed in sunflower oil and vinegar. This is also usually covered in another thick layer of sirene cheese, served with a side of fresh fruit. Another thing Bulgarians love is meat. This is perfectly reflected in their traditional dish, mishana skara. Mishana skara is a platter of mixed meat, usually a koift, a Bulgarian meatball, a pork steak, a pork skewer, and a special Bulgarian sausage called a kebabchi. This is usually served with french fries, onions, a bean salad, a Bulgarian red pepper relish called liuntenka, I'm sorry, I probably butchered that, and a few glasses of beer. One popular dessert in Bulgaria is funiki es krem. Funiki es krem is a long barrel-like ice cream cone pastry kind of thing, filled with room temperature pastry cream or whipped cream. Kind of like a very long cannoli. Those are some traditional Bulgarian foods, so let's take a look at some Bulgarian sports. The national sport of Bulgaria is weightlifting, but it's not very popular at an amateur level. Football or soccer is the most popular sport in Bulgaria, but basketball, gymnastics, and volleyball are also pretty popular. Magdalena Malieva is a very successful tennis player from the 90s from Bulgaria and the early 2000s. Hristo Stoichkov, the leader of the so-called golden age of Bulgarian football in the 90s, is also a very well-known Bulgarian sports person. The most well-known Bulgarian sports person, without a doubt, is Dimitar Berbatov, a very popular footballer that played in the aforementioned golden age of Bulgarian football. He played for Man United and Tottenham and Bayer Leverkusen, but not many people know this. In 1998, he actually started off at CSKA Sofia, the best football team in Bulgaria. That's kind of disputed, though, also with Ludogorets Razgrad. But that's really all I have on sport in Bulgaria, so let's take a deep dive into Bulgarian history. This is where I usually put in a little segment of the leader speaking, but right now I don't really know who the Bulgarian leader is because they're in the middle of an election, so let's just jump into Bulgarian history. Bulgaria's history is colorful, to say the least. People call Afghanistan the Empire Graveyard. They haven't seen Bulgaria yet. People have been calling Bulgaria home for 15,000 years. Bulgaria was invaded in 680 by the Central Asian Bulgar tribes and was annexed in 681. The Bulgarian Empire the Bulgars created was Christianized in 1864 by the Byzantines. They were then invaded by Byzantium in 1018 and were reduced to a satellite state called the Archbishopric of the Bulgarian Patriarchate. That's a mouthful. There was constant rebellion, and the Ottoman Empire saw this and invaded the area in 1453. Bulgaria gained independence again in 1878 because of the Russo-Turkish War in 1877. Bulgaria wanted to expand its borders at the time of the World War I, so they sided with the Central Powers and fought Serbia for most of the war. They were part of the Axis in World War II, the Allied was Nazi Germany, because they wanted to expand their borders yet again. They mostly fought Greece during World War II, but also sometimes fought Yugoslavia and the Soviets. Bulgaria was under the thumb of the Soviets for the majority of the 20th century, but they became democratic in 1990, joined NATO in 2002, and joined the EU in 2007. Just now, while recording this, I just realized I forgot to put in a myth segment right now. I am going to do a quick one, but it's probably only going to be like 15 seconds long. So, I'll see you then. Bulgaria doesn't have that many mythical stories, but they have a lot of traditional gods, mostly centered around nature. The wood nymphs, a clan of beautiful women with long hair and wings that inhabit the Bulgarian woods, are a surprisingly big part of Bulgarian mythology, being almost like the Amazons from Greek mythology. That's really all there is for the myths of Bulgaria. I don't know really what to say here, because I literally looked into it for about 10 minutes and that's it. But that's really all I have to say for the myths of Bulgaria. So let's get into the conclusion. Congratulations to everyone still here. You've made it to the end of this week's episode. If you found today's episode at all interesting, please like, subscribe, comment, or follow wherever you're listening. If you want to get in contact with me, you could DM me at CultureClubPod1 on Twitter, at Oscar Dalton on Facebook, or you could even leave a comment down below on YouTube. If you liked what you heard, stay tuned for next week's episode on Albania. I hope to see you guys next week, so bye.